You're listening to the GRCC Provost podcast.
Greetings, persons of quality. We're back to our normal routine with the Provost podcast. On our last episode, we talked about advice for students, and I interviewed a number of people from around the campus who told their own mishaps and misfortunes during their college careers. But today I'm going to go back to the format that I've been using with some news from around the college, an interview with Laurie Foster, one of our great faculty members in biological sciences, who's going to share information from her sabbatical research called Pathways of the Professoriate, and then just some closing encouragements. You are probably as excited about our opening day as I am. I think it was wonderful to hear a panel of our first-generation students talk about their experiences here, and the main takeaway that I got from that panel discussion, we really need to reach out and make personal connections with students. Every one of those students talked about the influence that GRCC faculty and staff had on their success. The theme of individual personal connection seemed to me to be very, very prominent. I want us, as much as possible, to remember that as we go through this semester and reach out to our students to ask how they're doing, see what help they might need. Just check in. Do they need help registering for next semester? How are classes going? What do they think they're going to take next semester? What are their plans after they leave here? Reach out to our students. One of the ways that you can reach out to students who maybe you're a little bit worried about or you haven't seen in class for a while is through our SARS early alert system. It's a system we have at the college to alert our student success and retention coordinator, Chris Sane, and his staff about students who might not be doing so well in class, might not be attending, seem to be struggling either with adjusting to the classroom environment or with the material that you're covering. So I encourage faculty to use the SARS early alert system, and if faculty have any questions about that system, to please direct them to Chris Sane, who is our Student Success and Retention Coordinator. Brian Morris, music professor extraordinaire. He teaches a number of music classes here at the college, but most specifically, he teaches guitar, and he is himself an accomplished guitarist. He will be giving a performance on Thursday, October 1st at 7:30 in Music Room 200 as part of the International Guitar Series. That is well worth your going to attend. I have heard Brian play many times, and he is superb. International Guitar Series, concert number 1, Thursday, October 1st, 7:30 in the Music Building. On Saturday, October 3rd, 11 to 3, our exercise science department is continuing its commitment to community service by fielding a team for the Ride for Refuge Bike-a-thon. They are fielding a team to ride to benefit Feeding the Hungry in West Michigan. You can join their team. You can contribute to their team. You can come cheer them on. Just go to the Exercise Science Department website and you will find all the information you need to do any one of those things. In fact, there is a rumor that the Doctors Chesley may show up at the bike-a-thon on their bikes, so you could also join them at this fabulous event, staying healthy, contributing to a good cause, and supporting our exercise science folks. Finally, I am delighted to announce on this podcast that GRCC and Macomb Community College have been awarded a $3.9 million grant from the federal government to promote apprenticeships in the fields of manufacturing and information technology. $3.9 million for apprenticeships for Michigan. Great work by Amy Koning, Julie Parks, Judith Larson, Bill Pink, and many others. We were one of very few community colleges in the whole country that was awarded this grant. Let's have a chat with Laurie Foster.
Let's just pretend we're just having
a conversation. We've just had a little toddy. We're coming out of the pub, and we're talking about your sabbatical. And I'm here today with Laurie Foster, Professor of Biological Sciences at Grand Rapids Community College. And may I add, Excellence in Education winner. First of all, for faculty who might be interested in a sabbatical, tell a little bit about the application process.
Yeah, we're called upon to look at, in our application process, the qualities that create representation of who we are as a teacher. And those are all the components that are embedded in our faculty performance evaluation work, as well as just alignment to the college's mission and values and strategic plans for the institution. And then, as I understand it, it goes to a review of our peers that are part of a committee that is a subcommittee of AGC. Upon that decision, then it moves to, I believe, Provost approval for that, and then we're granted the opportunity to go away for study or a number of arrays opportunities you could have.
Now, it's not hard to write a sabbatical proposal, is it?
No, it's not. I think if you just tell who you are, if you express what you do and what you feel and what draws you to the work that you're looking to explore in a deeper way. So, no, I think it seems maybe a bit daunting just to first, like any paper you're ready to work on, it sometimes feels a little bit overwhelming at first, but once you get to the task, it's very easy to speak who you are.
You tell about who you are and what you've done at the college, sort of establish your bona fides. Mm-hmm. You talk about your project, explain step by step what you intend to do, and link your work formerly and in the future to values. A key component, you talk about how this sabbatical project is not only great for your own individual growth, but it benefits the college as well.
Absolutely, so that it is aligned in terms of our own particular growth that we can have, but the value added to the institution to come back and offer up its potential for others to grow from or learn from or extend their experience on the topic that you explored.
So what was your topic?
Well, my interest was to develop a study that I entitled The Pathway of the Professoriate. And it was really drawn on the idea of the notion of a life cycle. A life cycle is not a new concept. It's used in businesses, industries, etc. But this life cycle, in my world, is a biological life cycle model. And so it looks at the changes that an organism experiences from its birth through its growth and its development to a mature point, and then eventually facing decline as an organism. I thought that there seemed to be so many parallels, given that there's much literature out there about life cycles and how those operate within a business or an industry of some sort. And certainly there are some out there that are models existing around K-12 experience. But I've noted that there were not so much in the college arena. So in higher education, it seemed like that kind of just didn't seem to be given as much emphasis, and I thought it was found wanting of an exploration. So that's what I decided to take on.
So it's kind of like the life cycle of a professor.
Absolutely. That is the intention. So,
Like larva, pupa, adult, and then, kind of like that?
That's exactly right. So starting out in, if you will, an organism's infancy, and then moving through its stages of growth till it reached a mature state, and then what it offers in that mature adult form, and then as it moves into its what we would in some biological context identify as the decline of an organism, nearing and facing at some point its impending death. And so, that was the idea, to think that how does a professor begin this work, and then what are the things that lay upon this person as they're going through their beginnings of their professional career, and then what are the changes that we perceive both inwardly and extrinsically, and how does that manifest itself in our classroom experience and our delivery and our interactions with our students and our peers at the institution that we're a part of.
So you actually posit 6 life stages of a professor. What are those?
Okay. My 6 stages that I see, it seemed repeatedly evident to me that there were 6. Some might even argue more, but I think these are probably the most paramount. And the first is a novice professor. The second is an apprentice professor. And then the third is your professional stage, followed by an expert stage, and then a distinguished professor, which leads us eventually to those that are of an emeritus status.
So the novice stage, I think we, probably all of us who've been in the classroom, we have painful memories. I mean, people begin with different skill sets, different trainings. I think we all look back on that. I know I look back on my novice stage, and I think, boy, those students deserve their money back. And I always hope I never run into them again. Tell me what you think from your study characterizes a novice. And do you have a story from when you were a novice that maybe you could make me feel better about my own novice stage?
I think that would be great. I'll see if I can add to that. I would venture that in kind of summarizing the novice professor stage, it is exactly like you talked about. It is a survival stage. It is finding, I think, in essence, coping with the realities of classroom life. What will that look like? I think it seemed an overarching common thread that I heard from so many of the people I interviewed, that we've all been taught about a subject to teach, but very few of us were ever taught about how to teach it. And therein is the distinction. So it's one thing to learn a body of knowledge. It's another to have to disseminate it in a meaningful way. Of course, the danger is potentially, we teach the way we were taught. That may or may not be good. And so I think that's that reckoning that the novice professor has to take on. Who am I? What is this body of knowledge that I am given the charge to take hold of? And how do I present it in a way that has meaning to those learners in my charge? For me personally, I think probably my biggest, when I look back at novice, it was really trying to keep your head above water, just be 2 days ahead of the game. It was a goal, just 2 days ahead. That's all I could hope for. But I think the other thing for me is that I was scholarly in my understudies, and I really worked hard at doing well and performing well. And I think the big smack for me was to realize that not every student wants to do that. And
They're not all like me.
They're not going to do their homework. They're not going to read it ahead of time. They're not going to be ready for a dialogue. What's up? So that for me was a real disconnect. And so I had to kind of recircle the wagons and think, okay, what is this new skill sets that I need to help impart on this zeal for learning, and what that might look like for an array of learners.
As a novice, too, you think everybody else has got it down, and you're the only one
scrambling,
who's doing such a terrible job, and everybody else is brilliant.
Absolutely. So. And that was another message that often came up, as people would say, they just were so worried about perception, and how am I even close to what others are expecting of me, given that there was so much effort to bring me to through the search process and bubble to the top as the person selected. And so then how do you not look like you're falling short of that expectation?
What was probably the biggest surprise for you in all of this? The most surprising realization about any one of the stages?
For me, it was a tremendous value added. For me, it was maybe not the surprise, but it was the affirmation that it was almost my own personal journey as well. I tried to remove myself from my biases of what I had experienced and to really draw on what others had experienced. Maybe that was the surprise, that it was tremendously aligned to my own journey. It was an affirmation, and it was also kind of a validation of the work, and I think it's important for us to be mindful of as we look at each other as peers. And I think that, to me, is my biggest message that I want to convey, that we all come to this work at varying life stages and in all of its complexities. Having that sensitivity to why people are the way they are and how they respond to situations the way they do, and who has their creative juices flowing and who are seemingly more stagnant, and how do we respect each other in those life journeys and then find a way to help bring out the best of each of those stages.
As I look at your 6 stages, I see the expert stage. I'm still waiting, personally, but I think that would be a great stage to be at. What is it like to be at the expert stage? What's the upside? What's the downside, if any?
Well, and I think a point to be made, too, when we look at these stages and these modules that allow us to embrace them, I don't know if there is a rite of passage of any monumental one thing that turns the page into the next event, if you will. And there's no magic number that says at year 5 you will transition to apprentice.
Darn.
Yeah. So what does an expert look like? I think in essence, when I was examining the expert, they were at a juncture where they had really shifted from their personal needs of just being sure they are confident in the material, but to moving past just even the needs of the students, but in other words, helping to see if they could deepen their delivery and expanding their roles both in and outside the classroom. A confidence that walks in and say, I've been teaching in my world. I've been teaching mitosis for, 10 years now. What does that look like to these learners? What does it look like to me? How can I expand on it to really hone in on my delivery in a new way, not just perfunctory, not just trying to get through the material, but to really create an experience in that learning setting. I think an expert is influenced by more forces both inside and outside the classroom. It enables them to want to enhance their curricular development role, to think deeper and longer about why we do what we do, not just the fact that we have to do it. So when you're an early learner, early professor, I think it's, what's been the historical context of this work in the department? And I better just honor and follow suit. But this is a stage where we start to say, well, why? Why are we doing what we do? What is the intentions? What are the outcomes that we want in these learners? And are they true and are they right for the times? And so the expert starts to call those questions out, and then utilizes those external forces and external wherewithals, be it through curricular development and faculty training and professional development. How do we both give and take as an expert in our profession?
I often find myself having to sort of explain the faculty role, what it's like to be a teacher to administrators who've never had that role. One of the things I try to express, and I don't think I'm very good at it, the vulnerability that goes with being a faculty member. Every time you walk in the classroom, every class, every section, every semester, you are vulnerable. You are the representative of your, no matter how collaborative you are, how much group work, you are the representative of your discipline for those students. You are on stage, again, no matter how collaborative you are, no matter how much you are not the sage on the stage, that is the perception.
Right.
You see every face during every exercise, and you know that person's engaged, that person isn't. And that's such a hugely vulnerable, and you care so much about the subject matter and about those students learning. and it can be crushing. Am I the only one who thinks that? Or am
No, I think...
did that come across as a theme at all?
Oh, absolutely. There was, without any doubt, that sense of empowerment that you really are, running the show. I mean, this is your performance every time you set foot in that classroom. And, it is empowered by the autonomy that gives us, but it also is a huge weight of responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I think for many people, it was always that question of never quite reaching that strive for excellence that you hoped it would be. Sometimes you hit it out of the park. There was messages that felt like as the experiences go on and as you hone in your skills and as you repeat it semester after semester, you kind of learn your drill, if you will, and then it allows opportunity for refinement. But it does kind of put you in kind of a state of are they gonna applaud when you finish your lecture? Not likely. So what does that applause internally look like to you? How do you say, "Yep, I hit it out of the park today. This was an excellent day," or often the comments were made. It calls upon us to go back and refine, revisit, retool, rethink how it went and what went amok if it does. So without a doubt, that sense of continually putting yourself out there and taking risks. I think there was another message that I found that when people do take risks, they fear a bit of scrutiny of their peers. That, what are they doing in that room? Why are they
administrators?
Yeah,
what
right.
are you doing?
Yeah.
I heard.
Exactly.
That didn't go so well.
Yeah. Or, if it's loud or if the room is in a seeming disarray, what is happening in that room? And so, is that energy constructive or is that energy because of disorganization? So those are the things that you have perceptions on by others, both students, your peers as faculty, and your administrators. And so finding that way to validate that the energy in there really is time well spent and well planned and executed.
Teaching is not for the faint of heart.
It is not. And it's fatiguing work. I think that's the other message that I had, that many didn't go into it realizing the demands that it does take on your life and on the energy and on the family dynamics. I think that was another message that I found quite interesting in those expert and distinguished years. You now have another whole factor of you are getting older, but so are your parents, and so are the realities of other new outlying outside draws. Family context, those all manifest themselves in the pulls and the pushes in terms of when you can be at your best and at your finest in the classroom.
Tell me a little bit about the emeritus stage.
Well, that's an interesting crossroads. From a biological model, it would be, the time when reproduction of this organism is done and they have passed on their genes to their offspring. And so, their life, their purpose in such way has kind of reached its finality. And so there is decline, and yes, as the organisms, we would say there would reach a point of death. But in the world of us as professors, many people actually wrote in to suggest that they want to call it an active retired professor.
Emeritus sounds
Emeritus
not
just
good,
sounds too dated. But it is a life transition, and it's. I would summarize it in 3 areas: finding opportunities to contribute, managing new roles and responsibilities, and then finding new professional challenges. And those are the things that seem to be the underlying tone over and over. People didn't want to walk away entirely. They care too much about the institution. They've given their life's blood to the work. They are teachers at heart, and that will always be who they are. So how does that now present itself in new ways that have, taken on different meaning and have new ways to offer up reward? It is not meant to be a time of being sent out to pasture, but it's out to release you and free you to try new things that let you take those skill sets and apply them in new and meaningful ways.
You have done this wonderful sabbatical. To a person, everyone who knows about this work at this point has been enthused and wanting to hear more. So I know this podcast is not the only venue in which you'll be sharing. So tell us what your plans are to share this work more broadly with our campus.
All right, absolutely. The hope would be that these would be an opportunity for faculty professional development, and they would be offered probably as modules individually, perhaps maybe even choosing the one that's aligned most closely to what your own perceptions are at this life stage of yourself. But really, the hope is that someone would take these on in totality and attend all 6 modules, learn about the uniquenesses and the attributes that each life stage takes on, and then hope in that way to help increase have a heightened sensitivity to others' work, to have a better sense of your peers as you look to your left and right in your office area, as you look down the hall and you listen and you see and you observe peers that have been at this for a few months and others who've been here for 35, 40 years of time. Thousands and thousands of lives that they've touched. So helping us realize who they are, where they are in their journey, and I guess maybe just helping us soften our judgment calls, but also help maybe even raise the bar of finding a way to build some bridges and make some connections in conversation. So my hope is that people will attend them that are from all of these 6 different domains, that affords us a chance to really expose ourselves, if you will, a little bit about where we are and what that means to us personally, and help us all grow and have a enhanced respect for each other's position in this profession.
What do you think would be the key message for me as the provost from your research?
I think that as provost, I would like to posit that this research really affords not only faculty a chance to learn about themselves and about each other, but I think it should move our institution to think about faculty professional development in a real way that allows people to examine these things wholeheartedly and with some emphasis that this is an invitation that should not be slight and shouldn't be slighted. I think another point of this as provost is to help us realize from a human resources stand that there is kind of a journey, if you will, and that there is a succession planning piece to all this. You know, where are the staff as they both enter and leave, should they not do their entire tenureship here? Where are those gaps that get brought then to us as an institution? And then how are we, when we look at our hiring process and we look at our new faculty institute, how are we bringing them into the fold, helping them and helping embrace where they are? So I think that, that would be some of the things I would be mindful of. How can I utilize this knowledge around human change and professional change through a career? And how does that align itself to the professional development opportunities and to the human resources piece of it in terms of entering and exiting our institution?
What do you wish I'd asked you that I didn't?
Oh, my goodness.
Do you want to talk about your plant life cycle model? Because I went immediately to larva pupa.
I
That's
like that. No.
Okay.
In fact, there are so many life forms. That's one of the. I guess this is totally probably more from a biological context. When we learn biology as students, and when we share that to our new students in our care, life cycles can really kind of be the bane of our discussions because it's like, okay, this is and they all have their own unique attributes. They all, and I don't care if you're talking about a pine tree or a butterfly or a frog or a mosquito. We all have life stages and life development pathways. And so the uniquenesses of them certainly are there. I don't think we can probably put a suggestion that one size fits all. I don't know if I've captured all of the stages that people feel they're in. I would venture to say that it really does encapsulate a good sense of the journey. So haven't you asked me? I think you're learning science along the way. I'm very impressed that you had your...
I'm educable.
You are. You had your pupa forms and your larva stages all in line and in the right spaces. I am drawn to a piece from Parker Palmer that I know many of us have read and have used as a guiding practice, but I love this piece that he has shared. He speaks to the endless emergence of the generations. with its implied imperative that the elders look back toward the young and help them find a future that the elders will not see. And to me, that really sums up what my hope is for this, that we can draw on the wisdom of the years. We can help each other glean the energy from the youth of our years and find a mutual respect therein.
Super.
All right. Yay.
That wasn't so bad.
Thank you, Laurie.
Just as parents have long-standing disagreements about how to raise their children, Brent and I have had a long-standing dispute about how much we should feed Dexter Cat of Quality. I'm sort of pleased to say that I was right. The last time we took him to the vet noted he seemed to be a little bit food aggressive, and he had actually lost a little weight, and that we should feed him not just 2 cans of cat food a day, but 3. I had been saying this all along, and now the cat is clearly very, very happy, much more frisky, and he's become a little more plump, which the vet says is good. So is there a message in all of this? If you feel yourself getting a little too aggressive, you may need another can or just some extra carbohydrates. Now I want to encourage faculty and staff to make sure that they stay abreast of the work of the Academic Governing Council. This semester, the AGC is taking up 2 very important discussions, one around graduation requirements. What are the courses that students should all be required to take if they are earning an associate's degree from Grand Rapids Community College? So that's been a very lively debate at the AGC, and I encourage everyone who has a strong opinion to make sure that they give their feedback to their AGC representatives or to the 2 chairs of the graduation requirements team, Jennifer Batten and Patty Trepkowski. Issue number 2 is a new policy on substitutions and waivers. When is it appropriate, and what standards do we use to substitute one class in a program for another class in a program? Or when is it appropriate, under what conditions, to waive a program requirement? Share your viewpoints with your AGC reps in your department, or you can contact the Subs and Waivers Committee chairs. Patty Trepkowski, in her final year at the college, we're making sure she has all of the most serious debates on her plate, all of the controversial issues for Patty, Patty Trepkowski or Diane Patrick. I appreciate, and I think everyone there appreciates, how difficult the conversation can be when we talk about what we think is most important for students to take. I just want to offer my sincere appreciation to the graduation requirements team and the AGC body as a whole for the conscientiousness and the caring with which they've held these debates. Finally, to all of my colleagues here at GRCC, please remember I am proud of the work that you do. You are the highly esteemed, much appreciated faculty and staff of a very happy provost. Boom.
You've been listening to the GRCC Provost Podcast, produced by GRCC Media Technologies. Join us next episode for more Provost.